Welcome to charts today. It's Monday, the 24th of August, and we start by looking at the dollar. This is the medium-term chart of the dollar. It did actually fall quite heavily middle of last week. If we look at the weekly chart, we can see that we are still struggling, just slowly deteriorating below the cloud. This is the 60-minute chart. We broke that 99.50 level last week and plummeted away there. We formed a double bottom. And the normal rule there is that the height of the pattern is the height you can expect to recover to. And there's quite a good chance that this previous support level will now become resistance. And we are still bearish below the cloud, so that's quite key. Japanese yen, we are seeing that just flattening there. If we look at the daily chart, that was the intervention on the yen, and we are still just holding above the cloud, but the price moving a little bit below the cloud. And you can bet your bottom yen that they'll be watching the Ichimoku cloud of the yen in Japan. Looking at the Bitcoin, this has had a really strong week. Last week we had multiple days, but we've sort of hit the buffers there with a handful of candles that are doji-esque really, and you can see there that was the move, and then we're going sideways. So the big question now is, will we break and run higher, or is this a top and do we fall away? And we've got mixed targets, so no real clues there. What's your 1 minute targets? The Nasdaq on Friday, we saw really a mixed picture again. We're just struggling on the Nasdaq to make new highs. If we look at the S&P, for example, we see that has more recently made new highs. So that is significant that we are seeing that. So there is just this continuing split where tech is slightly underperforming at the moment. The UK market this morning just fairly flat, and if we look at the DAX in Germany, we're down around 1/3%, so that's quite key as well. Asia largely lower. We look at the Chinese market, that's just struggling at the moment. And we look at the Sensex, again struggling, recovery just taking much longer than expected. The Aussie market was up 0.5%, and this largely driven by resource stocks, which we'll look at shortly. We're seeing Brent crude and down just under 2%, WTI down just over 2%. I did my energy report this morning for clients, and WTI did look more bearish than Brent. So we are seeing a potential for this trend to break on the short-term chart. Looking at some of the other commodities, we've got cocoa, that's down this morning, but the trend is certainly up with upside targets, waiting to see if we break that resistance level. And the same with coffee. We're seeing there that we are breaking higher as well. Sugar is down 1% this morning, but has really rocketed, reversing that trend, finding some resistance probably on the cloud at the moment, but that's quite key. And we look at some of the other commodities. Wheat, waiting to see if we activate this upside target for wheat, but the trend is higher. Corn is up 2%, and that is a very clear move to a high there, so that's quite key. And then gold, really now through the cloud on the daily chart, looking quite strong. On the 60-minute chart, we can see we are just pushing to new highs, 46.56. So gold is really recovering quite nicely now. And if we look at the weekly chart, finding support on that cloud, big question will be, can we break and run even higher still? Inflationary fears fueling that as well. Looking at silver, we're not quite through the cloud there yet, so that's quite key. And then if we look at platinum and palladium, they're just mixed. Copper recently made a new high. That trend is still pretty strong with upside targets. And then if we go to some stocks, we start with the semiconductor index. This has been probably the main thing to watch for stocks, certainly in the US. And we've got a very mixed picture here where we've got targets in either direction. So the key question here is we've got a resistance level that's given us an upside target. We've got a support level to downside targets, which for going lower or going higher, that's going to be the quite key. SpaceX were up 2% on Friday, but that 150 resistance is really quite clear there now. And we saw a mixed picture in the Mag 7. Apple were down, Google and Microsoft, Alphabet, Google was up. Meta, strangely up despite all the negative news, but the reality is the chart is not great. And then Nvidia struggled; they were down 1%. Again, chips not doing great. And then Tesla, also just bucking the trend a bit, up 5%, but below the cloud, so not so convincing. The Dow, on Friday, we saw more rises than fallers. I find if you click that top column, you see many more rises than fallers. Goldman Sachs, that was a star performer there. If we look at the long-term chart for Goldman's, really has gone from 300 in 2024 to 1100, so virtually tripled in value, so really quite strong. And we saw mostly defensives rising, and tech just pulling things down a little bit. And if we look at the NASDAQ, the big performers were Strategy Group. There are no big surprises there because of what's been happening with Bitcoin, but boy oh boy has it been a very strong downtrend from 450 all the way down to 90. So really quite key, losing 80% of its value. Hopes there Bitcoin just have improved. Tesla, as we said, was second best. And if we look at the worst performers, they were again mostly in chips, down 3%, Intel down 2%, Western Digital. So the chips are having a little bit of a struggle at the moment. And then last of all, just a quick look at the UK market. Again, clicking on this column, if you click twice, we can see there are fewer red stocks than there are green, which means that market is rising. And a lot of the performance is in resource stocks, Antofagasta, Anglo American, upside targets. Of course, we're seeing that move in gold having quite a big effect. So resource stocks are looking quite good. But across the board, we're seeing a pretty good start to the week. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, have a great day. Bye for now.